Hello and good morning. This is Jess Stout. I'm here to welcome you to the North Chapel online service this Sunday, May the 2nd. First Sunday of May. Happy spring to everybody. The Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley will be along shortly to offer the reflection today. I speak to you from outside of my yard. I was determined to be outdoors, and I must confess it's been a bit of a process, probably a comical looking process of finding the right spot. The sun's in and out, the rain's still coming down just enough that I've needed more cover for my computer than I thought, so I've been sort of rigging umbrellas and towels, and I guess it's probably looked like I've been out building forts in the yard this morning, but I think I'm in the right spot now. Yes, it's a classic spring day. Sometimes it's the kind of weather that has us yearning for something a little more consistent, maybe warmer and drier. But of course, we know that Mother Nature knows exactly what she's doing. And I know that my peas and my radish seeds are most content with this weather pattern. So we'll stick with it. It makes me think how much Mother Nature has been an instructor and a reflector of human experience for me through all sorts of chapters of life. I think about the beauty of the slow emergence, like the colors coming out all around me today. I think of the rewards and gifts of patience and all the beauty that is to come. I also think of emergence from the pandemic. That is also slow and intentional and promises to yield great joys if we can do it with that patience and that intentionality. So my gratitude again to the natural world for sort of showing the way. How fitting, I suppose, then, that the theme of this month is caring for the earth. I know we are coming out of the theme of caring for ourselves, and I would say that there really isn't a line between the two. Caring for the earth, where to begin? I loved the slideshow last week of all the very practical and concrete things that members of the community are doing to protect the planet and to live in harmony with the earth, and how inspiring that was to watch. Quite fortuitously, I just finished this book my dad handed down called The Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram. It's been around a little while, but his basic premise is that a lot of the degradation and a lot of the earthly problems have to do with our estrangement from the natural world, and that humans need to reforge and reclaim their relationship to other non-human parts of our natural world, from the animals to the rivers to the mountains. And so when I think about beginning to care for the earth, I think about that relationship and all the ways I can nurture that in myself and nurture that in my own kids. So with that said, I will read and close out with this short poem by Rilke that Abram cites in his coda. Ah, not to be cut off, not through the slightest partition, shut out from the law of the stars. The inner, what is it, if not intensified sky, hurled through with birds and deep with the winds of homecoming? Please join us for the singing of For the Beauty of the Earth.
My name is Laura Foley. I'm here in South Pomfret, Vermont on a lovely spring day. And I wanted to read a poem which is about opening up after quarantine. This is called In Town After Quarantine. Newly in my body, in morning's gentle warmth, a thin tea, all I need between me and the weather. Outside my favorite cafe with a frothed cortado, burrito with salsa, black bean, sour cream, every scent rising, mask dangling round my neck like crab's cast-off shell, breathing in the spring soft air, raucous sounds of a passing truck, so welcome after 3 months alone together at home among strangers, men, women, children I do not know, except in my bones, studying glad faces from a distant table. The chatting fragments I overhear, clear waters, eddying stones, more sating than the burrito and cortado, the magnificent rusted cars passing, the clean, shiny cars passing, all swimming like trout in a river, frolicking beneath the wide, rippled blue sky.
Every word we speak and every action that we perform affects our future. Pema Chodron, from a book entitled Welcome the Unwelcome, Wholehearted Living in a Broken-Hearted World. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. My name is Leon Dunkley, and I am honored to serve as minister here at North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel in Woodstock, Vermont. Today is Sunday, May the 2nd, and the title of this morning's reflection is The Lightness of the Soul. This reflection has to do with the subject of chemistry. Now, last year on September 11th, I did something that was pretty dumb. I meant to do it, I had fun doing it, and I would do it again, fully clothed. I picked up the Sunday morning flowers and I held them to my heart, and I turned and I prayerfully honored the flag that stands in the center of Barnard, the town of Barnard. I walked out to the edge of the water, and I walked out upon the stones, and then I stepped right in to the shallow part of the lake. I walked out to where the shallow part turns into something deeper. I turned around and I allowed myself to fall right into the water. My good friend Zach filmed the whole thing for me. I still have it on my phone. We shared it in the service that took place on the 13th of September last year. I worked with Diane and Don Ransom to make good sense out of that service together, it seemed. The four of us had a little bit of lighthearted fun. It was great. I like things that are light. I feel that we could use a little levity these days. They say that the human soul is light, that it weighs only 21 grams. They say that you could carry it around in the back pocket of a pair of blue jeans without noticing. Just 21 grams, the soul is light. It is more or less the weight of a stack of 5 nickels, more or less the weight of a hummingbird or chocolate bar. Now, faith knows more about science when it comes to walking on water, but science knows better than faith when it comes to jumping into Silver Lake. Science knows that 5 nickels will sink into the water and knows that the hummingbird will float upon its surface. I love science. It brings me down to earth. I've become interested in science once again after many years of indifference. I loved it in high school. I loved the learning and the logic and the lab reports, but after that I was pretty much done. But I encountered chemistry once again because of a teacher named Walter White. Now, some of you may recognize the name. Walter White is a fictional character in a TV show called Breaking Bad. It's an absolutely fascinating, absolutely tragic 6-season show about power and powerlessness. It is a show about deception and addiction and love, and it's great. It won a lot of awards. The character of Walter White, this guy is important on many levels. The level of Walter White that is useful for us this morning is the level that focuses on him as a teacher of chemistry. The viewer learns about this aspect of the character's personality early on. In the first episode, the pilot episode, Walter White introduces himself to his students in a particularly nerdy way. He explains in this, I quote, "Chemistry is the study of matter, but I prefer to think of it as the study of change. Electrons change their levels, molecules change their bonds, elements change into compounds. It's fascinating, really." And while he is waxing on, the rich kid and the pretty girl are ignoring him and being disruptive in the back of the class. Hormones in high school and bad haircuts, it's all there, it's awesome. The show is superbly written. It flashes back early on to when Walt was a student himself, when he was a student at Caltech. It flashes back to a time in which he was in love with a young woman named Gretchen, a fellow student and another chemistry major. The two of them were working on a project about the human body. They were trying to figure out its chemical composition, and they were onto something. Their results came in at hydrogen at 63%. 26% of the human body is oxygen. 9% carbon, adding that up, it comes up to 98%. Then they add in nitrogen, which comes in at 1.25%, and then the trace elements of calcium and iron and sodium and phosphorus. And then Walt does the math, and he says, the whole thing adds up to 99.8888042%. We are 0.111958% shy. I don't know. It just seems like something is missing, doesn't it? There's got to be more to a human being than this. And then Walt walks away from the chalkboard and over to beautiful Gretchen, who is sitting in the front row, and the sunlight is just perfect. And he leans over her close enough to kiss, and he says, there's nothing but chemistry here. And it's a hokey line, and it's stupid, and I can't believe that Gretchen fell for it, but I surely did. I love that part of the show. It made me want to go into chemistry myself. I would study really hard, and I would find the nerdy girl, and I would drop that line on her, and I would be all set. I have a plan. In the fantasy that I'm creating for myself, I will be a chemist. I would want to go about it spiritually, though. I'd want to answer Walter White's question that he posed to Gretchen earlier. But I would soon discover that the numbers don't work out. You see, Walt and Gretchen were on task. More than 99.8% of every human being is elementally oxygen and hydrogen and carbon and nitrogen, calcium, iron, sodium, and phosphorus. That accounts for 99.888042% of us. The remainder, I want to assume, is accounted for by the weight of the soul. This is terrible science, by the way. But even at terrible science, the math just doesn't work out for me. If 99.888+% of me is as detailed above, then something like 0.1119% of me is unaccounted for. In my ridiculous soul science, this is the weight of the human soul. But if that were true, well, let's check it out. I weigh approximately 190 pounds. So 99.888+% of me equals 189.787 plus pounds. My remaining roughly quarter pound of me in my pseudoscience is my soul. No, a quarter pound, that's heavy for a human soul. Now, I do trend dark and serious, but this is too much, even for me. They say the soul is supposed to weigh about 21 grams. According to my pseudoscience, the soul weighs much more than that, coming in at just over 96 grams. So according to my pseudoscience, my soul is heavy, far too heavy to be carried around in the back pocket of my jeans without my notice. More than 96 grams, that's a lot. That's like 4.5 hummingbirds. It's not the weight of 5 nickels. It's more like the weight of 19 nickels. 19 nickels and change. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. And if you're groaning at my little joke, I understand. 19 nickels and change. I'm trying to prompt a question. What kind of change? What kind of change do we need at this time? If Walter White is right, if chemistry is the study of elemental change, how can chemistry help us with where we are right now? Chemistry, even pseudo-chemistry, can teach us a lot about ourselves. Just imagine if it were true just imagine if what was true within the world of chemistry was also true within the human soul. What if we knew ourselves that thoroughly? What if our knowledge about ourselves was 99.888+% accurate? I don't even know if I would like that. If there were so little room left for wonder, so little room left over for mystery. What would lift our spirits if this were actually true? What would buoy us if we knew ourselves that entirely? Isn't it more fun to think that there's so much to explore, that there's a great unknown out there and within us that is waiting to be discovered? Now, personally, just between you and me, I would love to answer these kinds of questions. I would love to blather on about the lightness of the human soul, but I am not perfectly qualified. But I do know of someone who is. Julia Butterfly Hill is a radical environmentalist. Talk about a lightness of the soul. This woman floats, quite literally. She ascends to impossible heights, and she is not magical. She does so physically. She puts herself fully in play, spiritually, intellectually, and bodily. More than 20 years ago now, she climbed into a famous controversy in order to save the life of a redwood tree, 180 feet tall and 1,500 years old. A redwood tree by the name of Luna. She climbed into its upper branches and she lived there for a little while. She lived there for 738 days, to be exact, from the 10th of December in 1997 until the 18th of December in 1999. It wasn't so much a protest as it was an active prayer. In those days and ever since, she's been trying to raise the consciousness of a world that often tries its best to ignore her. Here's what Julia Butterfly Hill has to say about what's keeping us down. She says, "When I think about how we've gotten to this place of being so separate from the earth and separate from each other and separate from our choices, it seems like there are many prongs that have gotten us to this point. I think that one of the core elements, though, is quite simple, which is fear." End quote. Fear does so very much to keep us separate in life. Courage, vulnerability, and wholeheartedness, these things call us back into community. We rise by learning how to live together. Our dear butterfly continues, she says, "Fear will drive us to make choices that our hearts don't long to make, that our spirits don't long to make. Fear will shut down the voice of the heart and the spirit and collapse us into beings without meaning and without value," end quote. I hang upon each word that she says. Her honesty makes me love her deeply. She goes on to say that our fears manifest in various forms of addiction. She says, "We are birthing an addict society." I went through a time in my life when I was a major drug and alcohol addict, she admits. So I know on a very real level what addiction is. In this culture of ours, we need consumerism and we need comfortability. We go through the same withdrawals, the same things you go through as a drug addict or an alcoholic. I see even the most conscious among us making the most unconscious choices out of our addiction to comfortability. She goes on to talk about what buoys us, about the kind of change we need right now, about the category of change we need: chemical, elemental. Somehow, she delivers the heavy news with a heart that's light, with a soul that's light, in keeping with her beautiful name, her transformational name, Butterfly. So, like I was saying before, last year on September 11th, I went out to Silver Lake and I jumped in all my clothes. And I did plan it out the day before. It didn't just happen. The day before, I went out to Silver Lake, but I went there all by myself and I didn't film it at all. I was there alone. It was quiet. It was getting dark. The air was still. The surface of the water was just like glass, and I walked out on the stepping stones that lead out into the water. The first two of these stones are solid. They're set securely into the earth. The fourth stone is large and heavy, and it teeters about 15 degrees. And this did not surprise me. I stand on this stone quite often. I know this stone well enough, and I can choose whether or not I want the stone to tip. I decided to let the stone teeter. I pushed forward a bit, shifted my weight, and I made the tip of the stone pushed down into the water. And when it did, a perfect set of fresh water ripples started pulsing out across the surface, right across the surface of the lake. And I thought about Oprah Winfrey for a reason that will become obvious. I thought about Oprah Winfrey, and I thought about her sitting in her flower garden, reflecting on her long career of 25 years, her long career of 35,000 interviews. I thought of her sitting in a garden with a new book in her hand, cracking the binding and reading from it, interviewing its author. In an interview that I found online, Oprah said, quote, "So we're talking about one of the great awakenings in life. Did you know about karma? Or did you learn about it along the way? I love what you write on page 13. You say," and she quotes from the book, "you say every word we speak and every action we perform affects our future. But where do words and actions come from? They start from our mind. When we indulge in resentment or obsession or of self-righteous thinking, we create several problems for ourselves. First, we suffer the immediate pain of those thoughts and those emotions. Then we often act out in ways that cause ourselves and others harm. Finally, we reinforce a habit that we would be better off without. A habit we would be better off without." Oprah just sat there quietly after reading from the book, and there wasn't really anything else to say. So she and her interviewee both sat there quietly, smiling at each other and then laughing together. Oprah Winfrey and her guest, Pema Chodron. Until they laughed together until Pema Chodron said, "It's pretty good. I think I might be better on paper than I am in person." And then they laughed some more, their laughter pulsing out into the world like gentle ripples, and I felt like singing. I felt like singing a Christmas carol, actually. I felt like singing Merry Little Christmas, believe it or not, sitting there at Silver Lake on the teetering stone as I was. I'm sure that I was thinking about this song because of the second line and not the first. Have yourself a merry little Christmas, right? Let your heart be light. Let your heart be light. Let your soul be light. We are free to let these words mean what they will. May we hold a measure of joy and grief, sorrow and transcendent happiness in our lives as we move forward courageously and together through some difficult days. Let us keep our souls as light as they can be, as light as a short stack of nickels, as light as a hummingbird or a chocolate bar. The lightness of the soul. May this be part of the change we need. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.